Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to show you how to rehand a National Guard Products number 220 series automatic door bottom. The factory happened to ship me one that was the wrong hand. It's a right hand, and this client requires a left hand for this installation, for this application. And the client has expressed a lack of competence in their ability to rehand it in the field. So we're naturally going to send this out the way it was ordered and properly handed. So there's a link below this video to the instructions, and on the instructions there is a rehanding procedure defined. So I've read through the rehanding instructions, and you might do that now. And we're going to go. Let's go over briefly right now. Remove the adjusting rod by turning left. The adjusting rod is right here. They want us to remove that by turning it left, counterclockwise. Remove the coil spring and nut from the adjusting rod. And that's going to be the piece that's down here. You'll see that up close. Hold that up to the camera. Okay, adjusting rod. We're going to remove that. Remove the drop bar by unhooking from the spring. I'm going to imagine that that's somewhere inside of here, but I can't really see it yet because I'm still connected. Unscrew the rod guide and install on opposite end with guide approximately 3/4 inch from end. This is the rod guide here. This piece of equipment right here, this angle. And they're saying remove that approximately 3 inch from the end, except if you have a model 310, but we're not doing a 310. So I'm going to measure this and just make sure that it's 3/4. And it's not. It's about 1 1/8 inches. So I'm going to record on my screen that that dimension is 1 1/8 inches. I just want to have it recorded. Measure distance of step 5. Measure distance from end of door bottom to center of screw that holds the spring. Now that's going to be certainly a reference to the only other thing that's connected to the housing, and that's that screw that's there. That black spring mounted up to the screw right there at the tip of my finger. I'm going to measure where that is from the opposite end, and I'm going to record that dimension. That's at 10 inch. 10 1/16, in fact. So let me record that. Okay, measure the distance. This exact dimension will be required on opposite end in the next step. Unscrew the spring from case. Reattach at opposite end at precisely the same dimension required. Reattach drop bar. Slide adjusting rod through rod guide on opposite end. Reattach nut and coil spring to rod in original position. On wooden frames, install the strike plate. Now, so the first step is to remove the adjusting rod by turning left. That's counterclockwise, and I'm just going to use, I can't. So we're going to literally turn that counterclockwise to the point where it's coming out. And as I turn that, you'll be able to see how I'm unthreading that. I'm going to put that down so I can more easily work on it on the desk, because there is that spring is inside of there, and it is it's under tension. So remove adjusting rod by turning left, and please do bear with me. This is indeed the first time I've done this. I think what I've noticed is that I have to keep this screw captive, because as I'm unthreading it, it appears as everything is moving. So I'll keep that thread from that nut, I should say, and continue to unthread this. Okay, so I've got it removed, and it popped out because, again, that spring is there. That's what we look at, or looking at. And I'm going to remove it, but obviously I need to remove the spring, place that. I'm not going to place it on my keyboard. It's got some oil on it. Place it on my paper towel. Remove this nut. Pull the rod out. Put the nut over here. Get the rod out of the way. Get all the pieces out of the way. Removes coil and spring from nut adjusting rod. Slide the adjusting rod out of the rod guide. We've done that. Now we're in step 3. Remove drop bar by unhooking from spring. And again, I've never done this. Oh, I see. So apparently all that you're going to do is, there's a spring inside of here that this center pin apparently is what's keeping it captive. And if I were to tease this down enough, I should be able to literally slide it out. Oh, okay. So the spring has a little hook on the end of it that I can see inside of here. That you can probably make tails of that as well. I'm going to stick my finger in there. I'm going to try to push it down enough to where it unhooks, and I can see that I've got it unhooked. And now I'm going to slide. I'm very glad I didn't send this to the client for them to do this, because it's not exactly simple. Not that it's difficult either, but all I'm doing is trying to push the spring down and get the drop bar to slide. That's all that is happening here. There is really not a lot of room at all for that to slide out. Can kind of twist that a little bit out of the way to get a better view at it. I can tell you it's a very tight fit that's in there, because the end of the spring hook itself is flared out so much that it does not absolutely want to cooperate with us. Okay. So the key was to getting it kind of, the key was taking the drop bar, because the height of the hook, the height of this was at such a point where it was difficult to literally slide it underneath this pin that was keeping it captive. So what I did was I just rotated it this way to get the spring to basically turn on its end to allow it to come out just enough. So, remove drop bar by unhooking from spring. Okay, we've got that done. Step 4, unscrew the rod guide and install it on the opposite end at approximately 3/4 from the end. Well, I measured 1.1 and I'm literally going to, and I've tucked this spring right inside of here just so that it sits nice and doesn't flop around. I have measured 1 1/8 inches. Now I will use the screw gun. Just loosen it. There's a nut inside of there that I'm going to pull out. Got a little nut that's in here. I'm going to bring it down to the opposite end. I'm going to slide the nut into the channel. The channel is going to look like that. I'm going to slide that nut right inside of this little channel here. And I've got my finger holding it so that it doesn't slide all the way down. I'm going to place it all back down on the table. I'm going to now take my angle, get it started with the screw gun. I'm going to slide it over to get myself to 1 1/8 and this flat leg was towards the outside before. It's always nice to take a mental image of these things, and not only that, maybe take a photograph of the item prior to doing anything so that you can refer back to it and say, ah, that's what it's supposed to look like. I'll do that with mortise locks that I've never bumped into in the past, because the last thing, especially those that are decades old and very discontinued, because I don't want to lose a part and then forget how to put it back together, is just simply the bottom line. Now, we're into step 5. Measure distance from end of door bottom to center of screw that holds the spring. This exact dimension will be required on opposite end in the next step. Step 6, which was 10 1/16, I think is what I said. Looking on my screen, yes, 10 1/16 from here to here. Now, we are going to step 6, unscrew the spring from the case. Don't go all the way. Let's just inspect it. It's under tension, so be mindful of that. And with my left thumb, I'm controlling the spring here. I'm holding it so it doesn't fly out at me. I don't want to lose any parts because I don't. These are all specialty parts. I'm holding the spring in place as I take the screw and get it completely unthreaded with that quite special washer that's there. I'm going to put that down on I'm going to put it in my parts pile. And then I'm going to carefully let the spring come out. So obviously, what we need to do here is flip this over. Okay, I'm going to leave that right there. There is a screw up in the housing right here. Pardon me, a nut. I keep saying screw. It's a nut. We're going to slide that down. We're going to get it down to 10 1/16. I've got it down about here. Now I'm going to measure 10 1/16, and actually what I'll do is I will just put a small mark. Just enough for me to know where I'm going to place it. We've got it right centered at 10 1/16. Got that screw inside of there right there. I'm now going to take the spring that I've already flipped over and its special little doodad, and that's where taking a picture of it might have come into play. Where do you reattach all of this? Well, that little giddy up that's right here is where I'm going to attach that. Giddy up is a technical term. Okay, so I've got it basically positioned where I want it. I'm going to try to get that screw started into its nut that's there, which is less than easy. Okay, so it was just a matter of kind of getting it flat, exactly where I wanted it. Now I'm about 1/4 inch askew of where I want this screw to be placed. I've got the screw a little bit too tight, so I'm going to back it out a revolution. And just get it to move down to my 10 1/16. Now I've got my screw at the center line of my 10 1/16 mark. I'm going to retighten it. Again, I've never done this before, so you're learning with me. Okay, we've got that spring reattached, and we've got the rod guide reattached at the proper distance. Now what I'm going to do is double check my dimensions. 10 1/16, that's good. 1 1/8, that's good. I don't want to get this all put back together to discover that I've made a catastrophic mistake and have to take it apart again. Step 7, reattach drop bar. Okay, so you'll notice at the drop bar I didn't flip it over, but I'm going to imagine that we are going to absolutely need now to flip this over, and that's what we're going to do. I'm going to flip it end for end, and my goal now is to get, oh yeah, we're in good shape. The retaining pin is right here, you can see, and that's where the hook on my spring needs to go into. So I'm going to work to get that just put right back in there. That would have been easier. The next time I do this, I'll be much faster. And I'm just going to get that spread down. Now I'm starting to see that this is going to work out just fine. A little material captive here. I definitely like it. It definitely performs the way that it did. And that's why that dimension is so crucial, because the length of that spring to where you've installed it from the end to where you need to have the hook in the spring engage the pin, that's a dimension that's, when they say exact dimension, I could say you'd be off a 1/16 and you'd be okay, but any more than that, you're going to have trouble. So make sure you get that all lined up correctly. You can kind of see it as I raise it to the top of the, closer to the camera. You can see right where that has to be. Okay. Slide adjusting rod through the opposite end. Slide it through. Reattach the nut and coil spring and rod in original position. Now this spring has lubricant on it that was towards the operating end, so I'm going to install that exactly in the same way that it was. Wait a minute, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. The spring, pardon me, the screw, the nut, I keep saying screw, the nut goes on first. And I did not record exactly how far down that was, but I can see from the rod itself where the threads apparently have never been disturbed or anything run on them. So I'm going to get it right back to about that area. Now we're going to bring that spring on. Then we're going to get it threaded back down onto this bronze or brass bushing that's here. I can show you. I'm going to rotate that to get the threads down to where the rod is. And yes, that's for sure. There's definitely oil on this, or some sort of lubricant. Okay, we've got that threaded started in there. Now all I'm doing is rethreading it, and it's helpful to have a paper towel at hand, because what you really want to do is prevent the continuation of getting additional lubricant spread onto pieces that they really shouldn't do. So if you keep it off your hands, you'll be in better shape. So I'm just going to tease this part down a little bit, and I'm just going to now thread that back in, turning it clockwise. It should get more difficult because I'm compressing the spring. And then I'll have it basically back in the original position, which was sticking out about 1/4 inch. Then at that point, I can kind of test my installation by pushing on the unit itself, and I will see that when I do that, I do affect this lever arm here to push my bottom down, is what happens. Yeah, absolutely. And because it's an automatic door bottom, while it's somewhat difficult to properly demonstrate it just by pushing on it, but when I depress the rod, the adjusting rod, I definitely, you know, I make that drop because of how compressing the rod forces this bushing to move. Okay, that'll come down, then the rest of it will contour down against what you're installing it against. And that's how you rehand these. You know, it's, you know, the bottom line is it would of course be better for the factory to simply send it out correctly, because you don't want to have to take the time of having to do this. But the bottom line is, you know, if it were to happen that it's wrong, then it does need to be modified, and that's not the end of the world, I suppose. Now the problem with rehanding these, should you need to, because this is a 220, it's asymmetrical. It's got this curved top. The end caps are absolutely handed, and you cannot, you can't reverse the end caps. You could drill, the one end cap has a hole in it, and it would be a specific hand. The other end cap has a different, does not have a hole in it, because you need one end cap to have a hole in it for the adjusting nut, okay, to fit through. So you'd have to get the proper end caps, or drill a hole in the other one. Then you'll have an end cap on either end with a hole. That may not be the end of the world, but that would not be the appropriate way to have that done. Okay. Nice quality product. It seems to work just fine after having reversed it. And if you have any questions how to reverse this or any other National Guard product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.